Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood. You're watching The Political Vigilante. I'm here with my friend and former detective with the Phoenix Police Department, Eric Oldenberg, who was on the show several years ago. You were a child crimes investigator, and now you work with a company. Explain exactly what the work you're doing now, because it's still relatable to what you did as an investigator.
Yes, very. So I have to say, you just used the term evangelical, and it's funny because my my title with this company is I'm a software evangelist. So software will be coming back, and we will be building a platform, and I want you all to join me. I just use this as a ruse to get people to know. So I work for a very small company based out of Gothenburg, Sweden. And what we do is we produce or we develop software for investigators who are child crimes investigators who need to review large amounts of digital media. So our software exploitation is a big thing, and we're really starting to see a lot of the cyberbullying and the catfishing, where they get somebody to send a couple of they get underage children to send a couple of images, and then they use that as blackmail to send more and more and more and more and send money and things like that. So it's gotten out of control. But basically what our company does is we build this software platform so that when you identify an offense, we do a search warrant at your residence. We have to collect up every single piece of evidence that could potentially have a picture or video on it stored. So we'd have to get every laptop, cell phone, thumb drives, hard drives, old computers, all that stuff to review those images to make sure, A, to find the images that we want to charge the individual with, but more importantly, we want to locate any images and videos that no one has seen before, that aren't known by law enforcement, so that we can find and rescue those victims. So our software basically kind of does that. It assists in if you think about it, or if you know the statistics, year over year, there's been a more than 100% increase in the amount of cyber tips that are submitted to NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So there's been this ridiculous curve of images and videos being produced and made available on the internet, but there's not the personnel increase in law enforcement, as I'm sure you're aware, to help combat that crime. So that's what we do, is we just try to make computer crimes investigators, basically internet facilitated crimes against children. We try to make their job easier, because I want you to think for a second about imagine having to watch this material. And one of the biggest problems with the material is the public isn't really aware of exactly what it is. A lot of people, because Graham, who wants to live in a society where we believe there's adults out there that will hurt children for their own sexual gratification? We don't want to believe that. So as a society, we kind of, relegate it to, oh, it's that innocent bathtub photo, or it's the, right, it's the, barely legal. Are they 18? Are they 17? The girl in the pigtails and the schoolgirl. That is not it. It is the investigators doing this job. So we aim to reduce the amount of exposure of the material, because we want investigators that are passionate about doing this work. We want them to stick around and continue to stay in the field, because what happens is we get overexposure. Within a couple of years, people are like, no, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And they take these expert skills they have and they go work for some private company that has nothing to do with child exploitation, which is fine for them. But then we lose somebody. We basically lose one of our best players, right? They get traded to some other team, and now they're not in the fight against child exploitation. So that's basically what our software does.
And so the software basically, it limits the exposure. So you don't have to look at these. When you arrest somebody, they've got whatever, they've got these videos or whatever, photos on like 5 or 6 devices. The investigator doesn't have to look at all of the devices. The software does that, right?
Right, exactly. So if you have the same picture on your phone, a laptop, a tablet, an external hard drive, and a thumb drive, our software will recognize all those pictures match, and it'll stack them into one image, so that an investigator only has to see one version of that file, and then they can do whatever they need to do, rather than seeing it
Sure.
as they get to this device and they get to the next device, and so on. It concatenates all that and deduplicates that material. Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I really want. I wanted to give people just a baseline of what you do and the software and how it relates to the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, because you've said on this show, and you and I have had conversations about this, that most, they make the videos. So the problem that I'm having, and I want to get your professional opinion on this. So Ghislaine Maxwell, gets sentenced to 20 years. R. Kelly gets sentenced to 30 years. And all of this information. Now, you just gave an example of, we saw 3 years ago, 2019, in July of 2019, when Epstein got arrested, we saw the FBI wheel out literally hand trucks with stacks of all of this evidence showing. And I'm sure part of your job as an investigator was, oh, who's this other person in the video? Who's this other male, this adult? Let's get who's this guy, because we have evidence of him committing a crime. Let's see if we can figure out who this guy is. So the FBI seizes all this information from Epstein's penthouse, from his mansion, his island in the Virgin Islands. I believe even they got stuff from his compound in New Mexico. No mention of people with huge ties. I mean, during the trial, so many weird things happened during this trial. And again, you're an investigator. You've been involved I'm sure you had to testify. You've seen the court system deal with this. And so many weird things happened. First of all, they threw out a bunch of evidence that was not permissible. They said only 4 victims could testify. In the Larry Nassar case, there was something like 100 some victims that testified. Only 4 people were allowed to testify. During the trial in December of last year, they released 118 pages of FAA flight logs. In that, it showed that Trump had actually been on 4 more flights. Prior to that, we only knew of 1 flight. So there was now 5 total. I find it peculiar that these media outlets like MSNBC and CNN that just hate Trump would love to fry him on something like this, didn't talk about that at all. Because if you talk about that, well, then we got to talk about the 26 flight logs showing Bill Clinton. He claims it was only 4. We have to talk about the 2 flight logs Hillary Clinton was on. We have to talk about all these powerful people. And also, she just got moved to a country club prison in Florida. And there's no photos there's no mugshot. Now, I understand it was a federal trial. You cannot have cameras in a courtroom in a federal trial. I totally understand that. Whitey Bulger had a federal trial. His mugshot is literally on the DOJ's website right now. You can check. The MS-13 gang, federal trial, no cameras in the courtroom. All 13 of their mugshots are on the DOJ's website. No mugshots of her. No, you would think there'd be paparazzi following her, getting moved in this van to Florida, or however, there'd be some long shot of her in an orange jumpsuit, getting in a van or something. So how do you, as an investigator, knowing the patterns, I'm sure you were trained in profiling, you know what the profile of a pedophile, of a child crimes perpetrator looks like. There's a lot of similarities, right? Like, check all the hard drives, so they seized all this stuff from her. I don't want to get into too much conspiracy because that's not the world you operate in, but they've seized evidence. There's all this hard evidence that I would imagine would be enough for you as an investigator to charge some other people with, flight logs, stuff like that. How are we not hearing any? I mean, the obvious answer, obviously, these are the most richest people in the world, so they have the money to cover this up. But just as an investigator, how the hell do you look at this? I mean, how do you explain this as someone who did this for a living, prosecuting these people?
I think what you're saying, all these questions you have are very, very valid questions, because one of the I actually just attended a conference last week. The largest child crimes conference in the world was in Dallas, Texas last week. And I got the pleasure of hanging out with some folks down in Southern Australia who are victim ID specialists. So what they do, and Australia is leading the charge in crimes against children investigation. It's absolutely wonderful. But the guys I was hanging out with, investigator found this out immediately. The goal is now to identify the children in these pictures. So that is step number one. It's called victim identification. We want to identify A, who has been hurt, who has been harmed, and then B, we need to figure out who his friends are and who they're talking to and who they're talking to, so that we can now focus our attention on them. So to have one person out of this whole mess just be the only one that there's a name, there's no any investigation into who else is involved, that's a huge question, Graham, because frustration would be the word for me. If that was my investigation, I would be climbing the walls. Why are we not talking about the other people? And because think about it this way, we talk about Jeffrey Epstein's island, right? For some people that went there, some it was a whole bunch of flights and they went back and forth. But for some people, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And when you have a once in a lifetime opportunity in vacation, you're going to the place you've always wanted to go your entire life. What are you going to do when you're there? You're going to take pictures. You're going to take video. You're going to memorialize exactly. You want to remember that trip. And then you want to show your friends the pictures, and so the pedophiles want to show their friends in their community, and so they're.
So just to be real clear here, as an investigator, that's the thing. Pedophiles like sharing these photos and videos with other pedophiles, right?
Yes. Oh, 100%. Kind of a bit of perspective about the Maxwell sentence. I live in the state of Arizona, and in the state of Arizona, we have very strict laws against exploiting children. And I just testified in a trial 2 weeks ago on a person that I found trading images across the internet with other people. And it was just this one guy, and all the material he was trading, he didn't create. He just found it on the internet and just shared it with other people. He went to trial, and our law, because he was found guilty, I just found out he was found guilty yesterday. He is going to spend 100 years in prison. He will die in per image, per visual depiction. So when he rolls the dice and doesn't take the plea and gets sentenced, the minimum the judge can sentence this guy to is 100 years in prison. So contrast this one person who we don't know whether or not he's ever touched a child. In my opinion, given the right set of circumstances and impunity, anybody who is sexually attracted to children will offend. That's just a fact. If you are into, like Graham, you surf a lot. If you're into surfing and I go to your computer and I see all these pictures of surf boards and places to go surfing, and and you're chatting with your buddies about it, and you're visiting websites about new surfboards, would it surprise anybody in the slightest to open up the door in your house and see a surfboard, maybe a couple surfboards in there? No,
three.
Yeah, three, exactly. And that correlates. So, but we don't know if this guy ever offended on any child, and he will die in prison in the state of Arizona because of this. And then you contrast that to somebody who, if there was any victim ID officers that have anything to do with this case, they are livid right now, because the first thing you do is try to figure out who else is involved, because these guys, they're not acting alone. This isn't and clearly in this investigation, they're not acting alone. So for me, it is the ultimate form of frustration. And then you see the R. Kelly sentence and you're like, I mean, I get it, this guy, but this is one guy. I mean, Epstein and Maxwell were a wrecking ball of exploitation, of abuse. They absolutely were.
For decades.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Like this is the thing that is so, like, I said, I guess according to the Maxwell trial, she acted alone and trafficked these kids to an empty field. Like nobody else was involved. Like, I mean, you got to be kidding me, man.
It's lunacy. Absolutely.
So
and it makes the people who want to trust in the government and trust in, you know, that it's going to be, everything's going to be done the right way and everyone's going to be treated equally. Things like this really, really, really make you question. I mean, if you're not a conspiracy theorist, this is a great one to start with. Like, this is a great first one. Let's enter conspiracy theory world. Let's check this one out, because this one's pretty damn, I don't know, it's pretty upfront.
It's literally like right in plain sight. Now, just to play devil's advocate here, because someone could say, well, hers was a federal trial, so the federal laws are different than Arizona's laws. What would you?
But again, there's one person. We're only right. How is there one person in a sex ring? Two people. Oh, one's dead, so we just have this one left. Where are the other suspects? Where are the other victims? They're somewhere. I guarantee you that they have built, somebody in some location has built the old diagram that says this connects to this, connects to that, flight logs, whatever, whatever, the black books. Come on. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Where would you, if you were the lead investigator on the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, where would you be? What would you be doing? Like, what would you, knowing the information you have in front of you, which is, let's just say it's the information we all have, the flight logs, the evidence seized from Epstein's compound, the 4 eyewitnesses who said that's the other thing that drove me nuts about her case. Eyewitnesses said she participated, but she was never charged ever with that. It was only with trafficking. And the media would never call her a pedophile. Like, I don't know if it's just
in discussions about female pedophiles. So if I was the lead investigator in that, I would basically, it's all about connecting. Who does she talk to? Well, first of all, let's identify as many victims as we possibly can. Talk to any child, anybody who's an adult now that was on the island when they were underage, find out who they are and identify them, and then interview them and find out what happened, and then start building kind of a, okay, so, you know, let's say we identify victim number 22. Victim number 22, who, you know, can you identify the people that you had sex with that, you know, and then I would start going and interviewing people, interrogating people as to far as, okay, we've got a witness who says you did this, tell us otherwise, or tell us what happened, and just go and start building this pool of victims and suspects. I mean, because you have to, 4, that number makes me sick. Like, that's ridiculous. And part of it was probably, well, we don't want to prejudice the jury. We don't want the jury to, you know, if you parade in 100 people, and that probably, I don't know, but that probably was stemmed from from that doctor's trial where they just brought in victim after victim after victim. And eventually the defense was like, all right, like, that's enough. This is making us look like crap. And unfortunately in court, they do things like that a lot, where they don't want to prejudice the jury, because remember, this is just Maxwell we're talking about. We're talking about what she did. And the courts are really good about basically putting blinders up to the jury about anything outside of exactly what we were talking about. Okay, did she track him or traffic this person on this date? Okay, that's all we can talk about. We can't talk about whatever, but all that's decided before the trial starts, like what they can and what they can't talk about during trial. So in my opinion, something for some reason, and I don't know what it is, I think you're closer to the truth than what we're hearing in the media. Someone decided we're just going to focus on this. You hear the headlines about these powerful names that are on there, and they're not releasing it, and they're not doing anything because of so many. And it goes across the whole political spectrum. It's not just there's these dirty Republicans or these dirty Democrats. It's the whole power structure. And nobody, I mean, the whole thing with Prince Edward, like
Prince Andrew,
excuse me, like what? We've got pictures, and it's.
Yeah. Again, let me ask you this: as an investigator, you're investigating this case. You're the lead. Let's say you're the lead investigator when Epstein got arrested, and you see this evidence about Prince Andrew. Wouldn't you be subpoenaing this guy for at least an interrogation?
Yes, find out get all their travel records, where they were. And here's the thing. It's so easy with powerful, rich people to find out where they were, what they've been doing. It's not like there's some guy on the street that's paying cash to live in a motel somewhere. There is a trail. There is a financial trail. Every one of these high, very rich people leave a financial trail behind them wherever they go, and they're easier to find and track down than anybody else. And even if you find them and they I'm not going to testify, I'm going to remain silent, you're starting to build this case of all these people. It's like, how can you be a one-person conspiracy or a two-person conspiracy with Epstein? How is that a thing? That is a question that I hope someday. I'm praying for the day I open up Twitter and they're like, the list has been released. Somebody leaked it. Now, in my opinion, this is nothing. If this happened as a part of my investigative process, we'd still be investigating it. There'd be so many leads and so many. It's like that happened so. Graham, the trial I just testified in was a case I did in 2016. And it was one guy with 4 devices.
6 years for that trial. And her case was like, she was arrested 2 years later. She's in trial. Her case was like wrapped up in 6 months.
Exactly. And then they don't have to address it again. So I'm with you, brother. I am with you as far as something is fishy, to say the least. Yeah, there are. But what saddens me the most about it, the thing that really saddens me, and it should really sadden the public, is yes, let's identify these powerful people, but let's find the victims, and let's get the victims the treatment they need. And if they're doing it on the island and they're all focused, you think these people are just pedophiles when they show up at the island? Right. No. Of course not. That's not just, now I'm attracted to kids. Now I want to have sex with a 15-year-old. No, you always want to. So there's so much more, and the tentacles reach so far that this would be a 10-year investigation, just trying to track down everybody. But let's not forget the victims the children that were forced to do things. And you can say, there's a lot of people that are like, well, they can make up their own decisions, and they went to the island and they were lured but they're kids. Right. Look how dumb you were and how dumb I was when I was 18, 17, 16 years old.
The human brain is not fully developed until it's almost 25 years old. So it's like,
they don't have the ability to consent. Honestly, the children can't consent. So there's a whole slew of victims out there that we don't know about that are living silently, knowing that this all happened. Imagine them. Imagine being one of those people that was trafficked in nothing.
Yeah. And then there's nobody else it's hard to just go, there's this massive cover. This is a massive cover up. I don't know what else to say. I don't like being a conspiracy guy, but the wealth of evidence we've seen, not to mention what you just said about the one guy with 4 devices gets 100 years.
Yep.
And your first thing as a child crimes investigator, the way you're trained is to look for the whole look for everybody else. I'll never forget the conversation you and I had in 2011. I had a show in Phoenix, and you were still on the force, and the Sandusky thing had just broken. It had just broken open. And I was like, and you said, oh, Graham, it'll probably come out that he was getting kids for alumni. And I was like, oh, wow. And you're like that, because that's just, as an investigator, what you're trained. There's a bigger thing here, because they have to, keep this, because it's a horrific crime. They have to keep this hidden, and they have to find their little secret clubs and the dark web and whatever else. And you brought that up to me, and I was like, oh, wow. And when that happened, and then cut to 8 years later, I start really paying attention to the Epstein case. And one of the things that came out, and again, I want to ask you more about this seminar you were just at about the female pedophiles, but I want to draw this connection here. And again, I want to hear your opinion on this as a child crimes investigator. So you told me that in 2011. I was like, wow. An interview that Whitney Webb did with Maria Farmer. Maria Farmer is one of Epstein's victims. She was not allowed to testify. Her sister, who was also victimized by Epstein, was allowed to testify in the Maxwell case. One of the things she came forward, she was victimized in the 90s, and she came out in the 90s and spoke up and said, this happened to me. And she said, and she was Les Wexner, who created Victoria's Secret and as a modeling agency, which again, there's so many ties. Trump had a modeling agency. Jean-Luc Brunel, he just hung himself in prison in France.
Yep.
All these billionaires are just so distraught. They keep hanging themselves in prison when they get caught, I guess. And there's no mention of him,
No.
but he had so what Maria Farmer said when she came forward in the 90s, the FBI was worse to her, and these are her words, than how she was actually treated when she was being trafficked by Les Wexner. The head of the FBI was appointed by Bill Clinton. His name was Judge, well, now he's a Judge Free, F-R-E-E-H. Penn State University hired Free in 2011 to do an independent investigation of what happened in Penn State. And he showed that Joe Paterno and the administration knew about Sandusky. There's emails proving this. They did nothing about it for whatever it was, 12 some years, 13 years, something like that, because his first arrest was in 1998, I believe, Sandusky's first arrest. But this is something Maria Farmer said, is there always these, because she saw these global elites and saw their world, they're always trying to seal off the story so that it's not this, because they don't want, as you would have done, a 10-year investigation. So I don't want to get too conspiracy, but it's weird when a guy appointed by the Clintons have all these ties to Epstein. Epstein and Maxwell were invited to the Clintons' White House in the 90s. They were at Ghislaine Maxwell was at their daughter's wedding in 2011, which was 2 years after Maxwell settled out of court when Epstein got arrested the first time in 2009. Then this judge is brought in to do this private investigation to basically say Joe Paterno, who died, and these administrators and Sandusky, who's in prison, they were the bad guys. Case closed. Like, there's just too, I mean, I'm an amateur investigator, right? I'm not a professional like you are, but I'm drawing these connections, and I would be asking these questions. And so, I mean, how do we rectify that? This all of these sort of dots getting connected, and then nothing is done about it. I mean, what do we do as a society? Like the most powerful people in the world are sex trafficking pedophile billionaires, and they call the shots, and we just all have to live in this. No, I mean, I don't want to sound too crazy, but I don't know what else to do.
No, it's terrible. But one of the things you have to realize is that, you know, and I think you know this, but once you get to a certain point of wealth and all that stuff, everything becomes about money at that point. How, you know, and if we have something that's gonna destroy the revenue stream or whatever it is we have, we got to seal that off as quickly as possible and move on. Because the more it's in the news, the more victims that are talking, the more platforms that people have to discuss this, the more of a financial issue it could cause with these big people. So they want to keep it. And I mean, quite frankly, the tentacles are going to go beyond the rich and powerful people. Like, you know, they're sharing with other people, and the rich people have friends that aren't rich people that are, you know, just based on the fact that they have these connections for, you know, both wanting to have sex with children and things like that. But it's clearly, and well, you know what, let me say this. I will say that during my time as an investigator, certain cases, the higher ups, the chiefs of police, all that stuff would be interested in, because it's a high profile case. And then the high profile case, instead of Eric getting to investigate it the way he wants to investigate it, now you're being directed how to investigate it. So that happens much more than you think. So any high profile case you see on TV, if you think some regular special agent on the FBI or some regular detective on some police department is allowed to investigate the way they want to, this would be a international mess right now, because once the powerful people get a hold of it, then they direct how you do your investigation, which a lot of people don't realize that. And sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it's good because you don't want, detectives to do something that's going to, inadvertently make the police department look bad, or there's a sensitive something that has to do. But now ratchet that up to the ruling class in our country, and they're definitely directing how the investigation goes 100%. So it's exactly like you said. They're trying to seal off. Okay, we got Epstein. All right, he's gone. We got Maxwell. Boom, we got her put away. End of story. We don't have to worry about it anymore. But the problem is you're leaving. Let's not anybody forget about all the victims. And there's victims out there that are walking around every single day, having all that happen to them silently because of the shame that they feel. And imagine that. So here's kind of a side example. My son, my stepson, was shot and killed 12 years ago at a party in Chandler, Arizona. And because of the circumstances, he was treated more like a suspect than he was a victim. Well, the person who shot and killed my son is walking the earth today. He killed 2 people that night and was not charged with a thing. And he had some high, powerful attorney and all that stuff. So my wife and I have to live with that, knowing that the person who ended our son's life is walking around and just free as can be. Now, imagine that is somebody who was sexually molested, knowing that the person that did that to them is so powerful that they are beyond reproach. Like that has to be one of the most frustrating and sad things that a victim has to endure. They endured enough. Mm-hmm. I don't want to focus so much on who was arrested, who wasn't arrested, because unfortunately that shit happens. That's just, they've closed it off. But I hope to God, behind the scenes, every single child that was on that island that was raped or brutalized by an adult has been identified, located, and has been getting the treatment that they need so desperately for that trauma that they incurred. So, and that's not to say that I don't want the people to be arrested. I mean, one of the best things in the world is putting a pedophile in jail. You get to put someone away who hurts kids. So, but it's really easy. And law enforcement, a lot of times, all the way up to the top, they lose focus on who they're doing the job for. We're doing the work for the victims. We're not. And I have to remind new investigators all the time, you don't work for the police department. You work for these children that are being raped and brutalized in some circumstance that haven't even been found yet. Yeah. We need to get these children. So, but if you locate the perpetrators, you can get the children by finding the perpetrators. But I have to agree with you, Graham. It's something isn't right. It's clear. It's like, I don't know what a good analogy would be, but it's like if an entire football team went and committed some horrible crime, they raped a bunch of sorority girls or whatever, and they only arrested the quarterback, and that was it.
Right.
Like nobody else got. What about the tight end and the defense? What about those guys?
And the coaching staff and the owners of the team.
It was the quarterback. He was the one running it. I mean, how can you have a conspiracy when you don't have who you're conspiring with?
I know there's a conspiracy of 1 or 2 people.
Yeah. What? That doesn't even make sense.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood. You're watching The Political Vigilante. I'm here with former child crimes investigator with the Phoenix Police Department, Eric Oldenberg, who is now working with a company that deals with software identifying child exploitation. And we've just been talking about the Maxwell case, but I wanted to specifically ask you about this since you brought up that you were just at a convention or semi, I forget what it's called, but like discussing female pedophiles, because I think that's the thing that I don't think society, there's a documentary that came out on Netflix last year, and I forget the name of it, but it's about these 2 twin brothers. and one twin hit his head when he was like 18 in a motorcycle accident, woke up in the hospital, remembered absolutely nothing. All he saw was this guy looked exactly like him. And the twin brother, and this is a spoiler alert for this, but the twin brother then tells him we had this fantastic childhood when they did not. And the mom was one of the abusers. And one of the things the guy said in the interview is he said, we want to think that pedophiles are the creepy guy in the van driving by, the grade school, which sure, that guy exists, but you just shook your head because from your job that they're members of society, they're well liked. And like in this documentary, the mom, everybody loved her. And she was like, and when I had repressed memories come forward 5 years ago, I felt like something had happened to me. And I just assumed it was a man. I just assumed, because that's what society kind of tells us. Oh, it must've been this. And I was raised Catholic. Maybe it was a priest, which that's not outside the realm of possibility.
Right. Right.
And I found, my memory came that it was a woman, and she was friends with my mom. And so and that has opened up a whole doorway for me. And there's this organization 1 in 6, which is for male survivors. That's the number that's what's reported. 1 in 6 men have been sexually abused by the time they're 18, and 45% of their abusers are female. And that was like, wow. And I've been in support groups and I've heard a lot of people's stories, and it is way more women than I ever thought were possible. Not to discount the male. To me, a pedophile is a pedophile. I don't like any of them, but I wanted to hear from a professional standpoint in terms of the identification and the profiling of the perpetrators. What I'm sure there's a difference, because like men are typically visually more stimulated. So men are probably using more of the videos anyway, but I wanted to hear your professional opinion and was there any that you heard at this convention, and what new information is out there that maybe we as a society weren't aware of before?
Yeah. So let me start by telling you a story about one of the female pedophiles that I arrested as a part of my investigation. And it was one of the most surreal things ever, because basically someone was trading a child exploitation on the internet. And real quick, I want to just, for all in porn is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's been accepted mainstream. We don't want to think for a second any of this is accepted mainstream. But back to the story.
Pornography also is like, it's consenting adults typically, and this
exactly. I say, and it drives me crazy. But anyway, back to the story. So I arrested. So this person, we just identify an internet protocol address on the in Phoenix. We do all the background. Get there. There's an adult male, an adult female, and the adult female's 20-year-old son. We go to the apartment. There's computer parts everywhere. The 20-year-old son is one of these guys that is white as a ghost. His hair is down past his, won't make eye contact with anybody. He just looks like this total loser. So we're like, that's the guy. That's our guy. We definitely got this kid. He just wants to, whatever. So we bring him in, we interview him, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And we're like, this is weird. So we're like, okay, it's not him. It's the adult male who's the boyfriend of the woman. And it's not his son. It's just her son. So we bring him in and we interview. We're like, it's got to be this guy then. It's got to be this guy. And we interviewed and interrogated this man for an hour and 15 minutes before he finally said it was Teresa. And because we're like, this guy's hiding something. He's hiding something. He's hiding something. He's hiding something. He's like, it was Teresa. And we were blown away. Like and she's an average looking, she's not like some creepy, she's just like an average looking woman, and like anybody you'd see. And so we bring her in and we're like, what the I mean, what the fuck, like how? And what she told us was that when she was young, her father left them when she was about 8 or 9 years old, and so she didn't know him very well. And as she got older and interacted with him more, and she became a sexual person, she was sexually attracted to her father. So she realized she was physically attracted to her father. So her story was she would download these video files and she would pretend exactly like what holy, and she had a whole slew of these videos, and then she tried to show them to her boyfriend to you know, hey, you know, watch this, because she wanted him to like have the fantasy that she was, it was absolutely 100% insane. But that's just one example. But yes, there is and back to your other point too about the creepy guy in the van and stranger danger. That's when they didn't know what they were doing. Nowadays, it's your family. Most of the time, it's a non-custodial adult that you live with. So a woman has a child, the man marries or, you know, starts to date the woman so he can get at the children. So that's typically what it is. But I will tell you, there are no socioeconomic borders to pedophilia. I've arrested people that quite literally are homeless, and I've arrested people that have a helipad on the property that we're conducting the search warrant in. Like a surgeon. We arrested a surgeon that had a beautiful wife. He lived in a mansion. There were Lamborghinis in the driveway. There was a helipad, and this guy flushed it all away so he could look at pictures of children. But getting back to the female part of it, it is, I mean, there's clearly something psychologically broken with a woman who is going to do something like that, right? Because their instinct, their intuition is to protect and to nurture a child. And something is completely miswired where they don't do that. But what they're doing is in their mind, they're telling them it's out of love. It's like kind of like what Michael Jackson did, in my opinion, is he didn't believe he was a pedophile. I love these children. Right. I love them. And what do you do with people you love? You make love with them. Like, so the motherly instinct, they kind of use that as a means, and they also use it as justification, if that even makes sense. But it's just so twisted because it starts with the bathing of the kids, and then we start playing games, and it's not too dissimilar from the way that the adult males do it as well. But it's just, I think here's the thing. You grow up pretty quickly to learn that, you know, don't trust guys until they kind of, you know, guys are, you know, they'll do what guys do. But women, no, we are genetically wired to believe they're going to take care of us. They're going to trust us. They're going to nurture us, which makes it so much more egregious when they violate that. Like that's going to cause some serious, and I'm sure you're dealing with some serious mental repercussions of what happened, because it's such a violation of what you expect in this world, what you expect from an adult female. Like,
yeah. And I've heard a lot of stories of, you know, the older sister, the babysitter. I mean, I've heard a lot of people share stories where the babysitter is like, man, the female babysitter come like abusing the 7-year-old, 8-year-old boy. I've heard that story, and girl. You
Yep.
know, I know women that have been abused by women. And so, and I've heard, again, female family members and all kinds of stuff like that.
That's typically where it starts, is within the home. Like,
right.
You hear all that, you know, there's a ton of money, and it kind of frustrates me, all this money and all these organizations fighting human trafficking. And I'm not discounting that human trafficking occurs. 100% it occurs. But the bigger problem is the children who aren't being trafficked. They're just at home. Right. And friends are coming in, adults are coming in, they're getting access to these children, and it's not really trafficking. They're just being abused straight up by people that they know and they trust. What an absolute, I mean, that has got to make you not want to trust people at all when you get violated by someone who by default you're supposed to trust.
Right. So the other thing too, like, how much of it, in terms of like not suspecting women, is it cultural in the sense of this story? the 30-year-old guy has sex with the 15-year-old girl. He's a monster. He's a pedophile. The 30-year-old woman has sex with the 15-year-old boy. And hey, high five, bro, you're in the club.
Right.
Like that. And I can remember being like 17, 18, 19 years old. Again, I was just like, oh man, I wish I would have, some hot 30-year-old would have, you know, and I know I have now friends who had that, guy friends, and they're like, oh, it messed me up. Because again, you still have an adult exploiting a child, and a 15-year-old boy, his hormones are going through the roof. He would do anything for sex. I mean, give me a break. Like you could, a 30-year-old woman could come in and make this guy do anything. Yeah. And so there's that cultural thing of like, you know, oh, hey man, high five, brother. You're in the club now. So it's almost like we're and then you're excusing a female, a predator. I mean,
No. And then, and the media makes it worse because the woman is always typically very attractive. It's like an attractive woman. And you're like, shit, if I was 15, right. No, but you're 100% correct. The problem is that, like you said, your brain hasn't developed enough. And let's not forget the number one tool that is used when you are going to abuse a child. And that is manipulation. That is 100% manipulation. And it's especially easy when you're an authority figure, and a teacher is you grow up, everybody loves teachers because they're because they have nurtured us. Mm-hmm. They have taken care of us ever since this kid was in kindergarten. He had a teacher that looked out for his best interests. And then he's 15 years old and hey, I'm horny. It feels like this feels great. But that's not in their best interest. They are now doing something for their own purposes, and they are using that child. And then you feel, because they're not in love, they're not going to marry these. There's nothing like that. It's 100% manipulation of power to get what you want sexually, with complete disregard for the health and the mental well-being of the child that you're abusing. I mean, it's insidious is what it is.
Was there any new information that you found at this seminar that you were just at? You said there was a whole track about female pedophiles. Was there any new information or data that they've come across, or you came across?
No, it's just, it's one of these things that it's so infrequent. Like you don't, I mean, I would say there's, it's 99%, in my opinion, I don't have the stats, but it's 99% male, if not even higher than that. So it's almost like when you find one, you don't believe, like we didn't believe it. I didn't believe this. There's no way. You didn't even consider that it was the woman. So part of the things that they're saying nowadays is consider the woman, consider, don't just discount it, because this is, and I think a greater problem is the proliferation of, and the easy accessibility of pornography on the internet, like Pornhub and things like that. And one of the number one searches is stepdad or stepdaughter and daddy, and all these inappropriate like relationships that are adult, but they're highly inappropriate. But hey, there's videos of it, and then people get this in this in this mindset of this is what I want to do. But the bottom line is don't discount females, because, okay, when you become 14 years old, whatever, and you start getting sexual feelings, you don't choose, it's not a personal choice. I want to be attracted to women. I want to be attracted to men. I want to be attracted to both people. You feel what you feel for whatever reason. And women just as much, not just as much, but they're just as susceptible, I would say, as men, of having something in their brain that says, I am attracted to that 8-year-old child or whatever. They're at a pool one day and they look around and they're like, wait a second, this is making me feel a certain way. And then the problem is then the abusers become, the people who are abused, they become abused. And that's what one of the things Teresa told me is that she wasn't sure, she didn't remember, but she thinks she was abused by him when she was little. But abusers oftentimes then they don't know where to put all that. So imagine you're a young woman and you get, you're the victim of a pedophile, maybe long-term, whatever. And now you have a child and you have all this, and now you're growing up and you're feeling, and you don't know where to put any of this stuff because there's no, who do you talk to? Like, who do you go
Right.
to? You know, there's no, you know, clinicians. And if you find one, hey, this is what happened to me, they're going to be like, that's not my specialty, because there's just not enough. There's not enough information. But the bottom line is don't discount the fact that it could be a female. Period.
Yeah.
And and unfortunately, you know all too well. And they can slip under the radar better because we're all looking for the guys.
Sure.
Like I mean, Teresa could have kept her mouth shut, and if her boyfriend didn't say anything, we would have been like, all right, let's take all this back to the thing and figure this out. And maybe nobody would have been arrested, because it's that, like, it's like you don't even see them. They're not even part of the landscape, but they are, which makes it more insidious than anything.
Well, yeah, getting back to the Maxwell case and Epstein, it wasn't just Maxwell. It was several other women were his like recruiters. I mean, that's the thing that was insidious too, is with regard to trafficking. You know, a young, attractive woman is sitting alone, you know, having coffee. If a guy goes up and goes, hey, what's your number? She's going to be like, uh-huh. But another woman comes up and goes, oh my God, I love your dress. And she feels safe. Like you say, oh, it's a woman. So she's not, I can trust her.
Yep.
And then, hey, you should go to this party at my boyfriend's house. And then she's trafficked, like snatched up, you know, or you should be a model. You know, that's why the modeling industry is so insidious that's what the Epstein case uncovered, was all these, like, finding these 14, 15-year-old, you know, beautiful girls going, we'll help you with your modeling career. I mean, Epstein was quoted by Virginia Roberts Giuffre, one of his victims, laughing after he got off the phone because he paid this family in France like 30 grand to send their daughters to him. And he's like, boy, everyone's got a price. Like, and it's just it's so insidious how it's done. But yeah, it's like you say, it's not just the men. There's women involved,
and girls. Same thing. What happens is you spelled that out perfectly. You know, Maxwell approaches somebody, hey, this is cool, let's do this, let's start hanging out. And then, hey, let's go to this, you know, cool party or this private island, wherever the hell we're going to do. And this 16, 17-year-old girl that hates her parents, this super cool woman, is now they're part of this thing. They take them to this party, and now they feel the pressure. Hey, wait a second. This person paid all this money to bring me here. Mm-hmm. They did all this, they did all that, and I don't want to make them mad. So, you know how kids think. They don't. They don't think. But we've all been in situations where we feel pressured to do something and we don't want to do it, but we do it anyway for whatever, for a social norm or for some reason. But yeah, that's the thing you got to add on top of that is that it's all manipulation. They know these, you know, when one of the first investigations I did, there was a guy putting ads in a little publication, a little paper publication, looking for models. And he was specifically looking for underage kids. So people would call up and they're like, hey, I want to get into this, but I'm not sure. And he'd be like, you know, I'm 7. Well, don't worry about that. We can get you an ID. We can fucking do this. We can do that. So the girl, like you said, the girls and the young boys, they're struggling with self-esteem. And here's someone saying, you're beautiful. You're so beautiful. I want to show you to the world. And which isn't really true. They just want to groom them, basically.
And another thing too, and we'll move on to another subject in a second. But one of the things you said to me when I was in 2011, when the Sandusky thing is because he had that like disadvantaged kids foundation that he used, and you said, you go, Graham, you show me 100 kids that have been abused, 95 of them probably came from tough homes because those kids are easier, you know, to manipulate. Because again, if there's two parents paying attention, it's going to be hard to get to, you know, because like you'd say, they find the disadvantaged kid, the kid from the poor home whose parents is a single parent home or whatever, and go, oh, we got a new bike. Like if your kid came home and said, hey, that my soccer coach gave me a new bicycle, you'd be like, what? And you know, everything would stop. You'd be talking to this guy. But if there's no parents around, or the one parent's working 3 jobs or whatever, that's the other thing. Maxwell had a non-for-profit that's dealt with something like Clean the Oceans. and in it on their website, and she since took it down. When Epstein got busted, she took it down. But it said, like, we're going to help disadvantaged youth, learn about, saving the oceans or whatever. And it's like, yep, because again, if somebody said, they want to pay you, 40 grand to fly your kid to some modeling school, you'd be like, I don't know this guy at all, but you're poor, you don't have money, and somebody offers you 30 grand, you're going to go, yep.
But also too, like if someone approaches you and your daughter and says, hey, I want her to be a model, you're going to be like, what the fuck? But hey, I want your daughter to be a part of this youth to help clean up the ocean. It's a way to get their foot in the door. It's an opener is what it is. And it almost makes me, I didn't know about the ocean thing, but if you think about it, it's almost like it's a fishing metaphor. Like they're fishing for children. Like it's absolutely horrible, because that's what pedophiles do, is they gravitate towards jobs where it's a target rich environment. You go fishing, you're not going to go fishing out in the woods where there's no water. You're going to go to where the lakes are and where the rivers are. And that's what they do. They surround themselves with positions where they have access to children and authority over children. And now they've got this guise of, we're going to help clean up the ocean and we're going to do all that. And sure, they're out there doing that. But when the day's over and they're all having drinks and relaxing, and that's when things are starting to get out of control. But no, that's exactly what happens, is they surround themselves with potential victims. And I hate to say it, it's criminally brilliant to have come up with, like Sandusky's thing, we get troubled youth and, all this other stuff. And again, troubled youth is perfect. Products of dysfunction. That's like, nobody's going to go after the kid whose both parents are at every soccer practice. Like that's not going to happen. The kids that the coach is leaving and the kid's still waiting for his mom to show up. Hey, Billy, you need a ride? Like it's opportunistic. For sure. Yeah. And if it doesn't come naturally, they create their own opportunity. And that's what that whole cleaning the ocean was. Create an opportunity to locate and target.
And what parent would be like, oh, I want my kids involved in a save the ocean thing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Exactly. And what's so insidious about it is the sports coaches and the people that work with kids that are actually doing it for good, noble reasons, and are good instructors and good educators and good coaches and a legitimate, like, youth clean the oceans group or whatever. Like, those are legitimate. And now they all can be suspect, like.
Exactly. It makes people look, imagine being me, knowing, having arrested soccer coaches and music teachers and principals and like people of authority. Yeah. I can't look at anybody without being like, wait, why? What's going on? Why is that person still doing whatever? Like, yeah, no, it's insidious. But the part of the problem is that the public, not only is the public not aware, they don't want to people don't want to know about this. They don't want to hear about this. They don't. Our chief of police several years ago told us to stop putting out press releases when we arrested pedophiles, because she didn't want our citizens to believe that Arizona was the pedophile capital of the world, because we were arresting 2-3 a week. Oh, we don't want to let the world know. God forbid people know what's going on in their own backyards. But yeah, it's absolutely brutal.
I think it's one of those things when confronted with the knowledge of it, their first reaction is just like, nope.
Yep.
They just
block it out. Yep.
Nope. They don't want to hear it because it's too difficult. It's too uncomfortable. I mean, they've done studies on specifically with incest of like, majority of people are more uncomfortable with the person saying I was abused by a family member than the actual abuse that happened. Like, why'd you bring this up? Like, why did you just let it go? Like, it's you saw that with the Catholic Church. They're just like, hey, the church does good work. Like shh, leave it alone.
And then let's not re-traumatize the victims and bring it back up again and make them tell their stories in court and things like that. Anytime you can avoid re-victimizing the children, because I mean, imagine you having to go up in front of a room full of 12 strangers and explain exactly what happened to you when you were a young boy. It's that you re-traumatize yourself, and then you traumatize the people that have to hear the story. So it's like it's just this perfect storm of we don't want to address it. Like the amount of funding that has been cut from child crimes investigations federally, locally, it's just ridiculous because
let's get into that. Let's get into policing in America. So
yes, let's do it.
I'll put that up there so I know to make an edit. Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood, and you are watching The Political Vigilante. I am joined by my longtime friend and former detective with the Phoenix Police Department. I was on Phoenix PD for 24 years, Eric Oldenberg. We've had him on the show several years ago to discuss the Epstein case. We've talked to him about what's going on with Ghislaine Maxwell, but I wanted to talk about what's the policing in America, because on this show, I've been very, very critical of policing in America. And there's even been times when you've like called me and you were like, Graham, like you didn't agree with me. So not that I'm bringing you on to get into some heated debate, but you're my longtime friend. And we've had these debates before, these discussions, and I very much respect your opinion. And I always say, when I've done segments where I'm being really critical of the cops, I always say, I have a very good friend who's a cop. Like
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard those.
I know a couple guys that are cops. I'm not just like anti-police, but so one of the things you were just saying, since you were a child crimes investigator, is that money for child crimes investigating has been cut in many police departments. And that infuriates me. And here's why. And here's some of the, when I hear this phrase, defund the police, some people go, oh, so we're just supposed to let the criminals have squirt guns. And that's not my interpretation, nor is it other people of what that statement is. I will bring up this example. LAPD gets 54% of the city's operating budget, $3.2 billion. In my opinion, that is way too much. And we have an insane homeless problem in Los Angeles, as does every American see it. Phoenix has it, every city in America, especially the pandemic only made it worse, right? So the problem I'm having, and I think there's a systemic problem in the way police are trained, and this funding is part of the problem, is that rather than spending, what if we cut LAPD's budget in half and then actually not homeless shelters, cots, but I mean housing for the homeless, giving them job training, drug treatment if need be, mental health evaluation, whatever it is, which this is a program, I've talked about this numerous times. This works in Finland. They did this called Housing First, because when you're homeless, you can't get a job unless you got a legal residence, and you can't get a legal residence if you don't have a job. So they're caught in this catch-22, and they had an awful homeless problem. And they even found out that the Housing First program costs less. The current way we're doing it, rounding people up, kicking them out of the park, cops, and I'm sure a lot of patrol officers would agree, they don't want to have to do this, go knock down tent cities and parks. But there's a bigger problem here. And I know I'm talking about, I'm putting a lot under this conversation. So there's the homeless problem, the fact that police are given, so we don't have money for more child crimes investigating, but police departments get military grade equipment. They get like basically tanks. That shit infuriates me. It infuriates me. And then I think there's a problem in the way we're policing. I don't think it's a few bad apples. I honestly think there's a problem the way we train cops, and the unarmed black people getting shot at a higher rate than I've seen video after video of like a white guy waving a knife around and they use a taser, and a black guy has no gun and he gets gunned down. Like and I'm sure you have personal experiences with that. So now that you're not on the
shooting
force,
a black guy who had his hands up in the air. No, I don't have personal.
No, okay, you're right. I didn't mean to make that.
No, I'm trying to add a little levity. You're getting pretty heavy here, man.
I know it is pretty heavy. But I mean, you see, like the Uvalde cops sat and did nothing while the one go like that infuriates me. You guys were trained with body armor and let one untrained shooter. Then there's like all of the videos that came out during the George Floyd protests of cops abusing their power. I was at several protests that were peaceful until the cops showed up, came in way too tough, way too hard. I had a cop like, get the fuck out of the way. I mean, they overreact. Their first reaction is force. Their de-escalation tactics are we're going to use tear gas instead of bullets. I don't know. So I'm very critical of the policing in this country, but I want to hear your view on this, because obviously there's stuff we might not agree on, and I know I just laid a whole, I'm sort of
just indicted the entire police community. What do you think, Eric? What do you think about that?
Y'all, all cops are bad. Go.
Racist. It's not just a couple, but you're a bad apple too. Well, let me clarify this first of all. Graham didn't mention this. I am a former detective with the Phoenix Police Department. I did retire honorably, so let's make sure we have that. Yeah, I'm not one of those. I hope
you were kicked off.
Oddly enough, the only thing I ever got in trouble for on the department was my mouth. So, and I'm sure you can you understand that, Graham.
Before you answer, let me just put this caveat in there too, because I know I just said a bunch of One of my things in the terms of the defunding of the police, and cops are trained to just come in like a hammer, is there should be more funding for what your job was, like actual police work, like preventing child exploitation films, solving murders, domestic violence. Like that is what police work should be, rather than like having to deal with traffic stops and all this other stuff where we're bringing a hammer to a situation that with styrofoam. So I wanted to, that's my thinking on how cops should be. I'm not like get rid of the cops and just let, people defend themselves or whatever, but go ahead.
One of the things is one of the important points is that when people say things like defund the police and get rid of the police, most of the public, the only interaction they have with the police department is they had a bad day. Like you told me a story a while ago where you were crossing a street somewhere and a cop was giving you shit and unnecessarily being rough with you. The problem is everybody thinks everybody's perspective, or not everybody's, but most people's perspectives are that one or two interactions they had with the cop had a bad day or treated him like shit, and it's easy to be treated like shit and treated poorly when you're already angry and on the defensive. Why did I get pulled over? To have that mindset, we're already starting there. But the broader thing that people need to realize is that when you say things, because I know what's happening right now with I know what the Phoenix Police Department is doing to try to catch up, and other agencies are trying to catch up, because what has happened with that rhetoric is nobody wants to do the job anymore, because it's like, why would I go out there and risk my life? So perfect example. There's a woman, I can't remember her name. She had been a 20-year police officer, got in an altercation with a guy and accidentally pulled her weapon and not her taser and shot him when she meant to tase him. It was an officer in the Midwest somewhere. Went to tase, wanted to tase him. That was the idea, but what shot him by accident and killed him. Well, she was convicted of murder. And this woman had a 20-year career. Barely anything crazy ever happened. She wasn't involved in enough stressful situations to be cognizant of what's happening. And a lot of times when you're in a stressful situation, you make a mistake. And that woman made a mistake. And there's video after video after video on YouTube of people doing exactly that. Grabbing I thought it was my this. I thought it was because your brain, you just go back into your training mode. But the problem is that people now, they hear this defund the police, and you hear on the conservative radio and TV about how, this city is a shithole now, and this city's a shithole now. It's Democratic run. But the defund the police thing, people don't realize, first of all, every city in the country, I guarantee you, the police budget is far and above any other budget for that city. That's across the board. Cops cost the most amount of money to run a city. There's just no question. Because, water services and garbage disposal, that's all well and good. They don't pay the people as much. There's not as many services. We don't need to have 24-hour groundskeepers to, you know, stuff like that. So the police department budget is always going to be the largest budget on any major or any city's books. The problem is a lot of people. So it's like this thing where the perspective is all cops that are out there are these street guys that are assholes, that are, you know, forceful and overdoing it. But there is a whole army of people behind them that are doing really good investigative work, that are doing crimes against children, homicide investigations, fraud. People get defrauded all the time. We don't have the manpower to handle all those. Like, it's like we already don't have enough money. And now people are talking about defund. And I agree with you about the militaristic thing. There was a point in the 90s, I think, where something happened and some bill got passed, and all of a sudden all these agencies could get tanks and you know, body armor, and they all look like soldiers now. There is no soft, like most cops now, they wear an outer vest that's even more intimidating than when I was a police officer. My vest was hidden and I just had a belt. Now they got all this shit all over their chest and they got placards everywhere, and they look formidable, and they shouldn't. One of the biggest problems I had when I was an officer was working with people that didn't know how to de-escalate a situation. You mentioned bad de-escalation, and our training is lacking so bad. The amount of hours we train to be in a confrontation with somebody and to deal with aggressive people, it was once a year. We'd go down to the academy for a week, and maybe of that week, 8 hours was scenarios when you had to deal with a crazy person, or you had to deal with a homeless person, or you had to deal with a domestic violence situation. So I agree with some of the pundits that are out there saying that we need to be training. We need to spend more time training than anything else, because it's the police, it's the officer's mindset and not knowing how to handle stress. Because if you put me and you in the exact same super stressful situation, we're both going to react differently. And it's incumbent upon the agencies to basically weed people out at some point. Wait a second, this is an aggressive person. And in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books, he actually talked about how, kind of countered what you said, where it's not a few bad apples, but the studies show that people who get in violent encounters, who have use of force complaints against them, typically have multiple use of force complaints against them. I had a couple use of force complaints against me over the years, but I know guys that were getting use of force complaints monthly.
Right.
Now that is something that needs to be addressed, and it's not on the department. It's not addressed. I know officers that have in their career have shot and killed 7 people. 7 people. I pulled my weapon a lot of times. I worked in a pretty bad neighborhood, but I never fired. Thank God I never had to fire my weapon at anybody. It's the last thing I would ever want to do. But if you don't think there's people out there that want to do that, and here's what's fucked up. They were perfectly justified based on the circumstances. The rule of law and the guidelines of the department say that action was justifiable. Was it necessary? No. Graham, I have been in probably 20 situations in my career where I would have been justified in firing my weapon at somebody. And I didn't. I de-escalated. I talked my way out, whatever. But unfortunately, there are people that want to do that. There's people that were bullied when they were kids that are cops. There's people that get into it for all the wrong reasons.
Right. And that's what I'm talking about. That's why I think when I say it's not a few bad apples, I don't mean every force has bad apples. I mean, there's a systemic problem, and it's the one you're speaking of.
Yeah.
You spend 8 hours a year de-escalating, and how many hours on fighting, on shooting, on the shooting range? Like that's a problem in how cops are trained.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, that you have to understand. I worked in the city of Phoenix, large metro, 5th largest city in the country. And I worked 3rd shift in a very bad part of town. I was at least once a shift that I had a confrontation with somebody. It's from some level or not. Okay, now let's talk about the police officers that work in I don't know, Middlebury, Illinois, let's say, some place that has 10 cops, 20 cops, maybe. How often do you think they come across confrontation? No, their day is going by and seeing all the people at the store, maybe pulling somebody over for a traffic violation, but they just don't know how to handle a highly stressful situation. So they go for literally years without any confrontation, and then it hits them and they have no idea what to do because the training is lacking.
Well, the other problem too, there's two other things. So I did a story on how a guy tried to get on the police department and he had a high IQ and they kicked him off and said he was too smart because they wanted, he'll defy orders or whatever their thinking was. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, oh, police departments have the right to deny someone with a high IQ. I think that's a problem. Right there. So you're hiring people, like you say, the guy that was bullied, the dude that wants to, that is like, oh, I can't wait to get a gun. You know what I mean? You've got that. And then you've got this back the badge no matter what. And if you know this as a cop, if you called out any of these guys, you would have taken a ton of shit. And this is, and you see the worst, one of the worst examples is that during the George Floyd protests in Buffalo, there was this old man, 70, frail, I mean, not going to hurt anybody, protesting. He had to sign up. One cop pushed him over. His head started bleeding. And that guy got fired. And when they fired that cop, all these cops walked off the force with him. I'm like, that's a cult. That's psychotic. This guy, I stand in unison with the guy that pushed over an old man. I mean, that's not just unique to, oh, Buffalo was the one crazy police department. That backed the cop no matter what. And I've been in situations where cops are wrong.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they just steamroll over me because the jaywalking thing. Yeah. I'll tell that story right now. I'm in North Hollywood, California. I'm going to see a friend of mine at a play. I park on Lankershim Boulevard, which is a very busy street in North Hollywood. And I look to my right, I look to my left. There's one car 75 yards down there, not coming fast. And I understand the reason for, I understand jaywalking laws. I don't think that is a ridiculous law. I run out in a busy traffic. I get hurt. Somebody screeches. I can cause a whole accident. So I get jaywalking. I get it. And maybe 20 yards down was a crosswalk with the light and everything. So I look right, I look left. I see the car way down there and I lightly jog across the street. This cop then pulls with a cop car. The guy gets out with his hand on his gun like I just fucking ran out of a bank with a bag of money. And I'm like, whoa. And he's all fired up because I don't know what his problem was. Now, maybe he's got PTSD from all of the incidents he's had to deal with as an LA cop. Well, that's another thing I don't think the police department is dealing with, is they're just letting, like you say, the guy that shot 7 people, maybe not on the forcing board, the guy with the once a month getting a excessive use of force thing. Then this guy comes at me and I'm like, whoa. And he's like, all hand on this. And then when he's writing me up and he's got this young female, he's all shaved head, lifts weights. I don't know. He's in a roid rage. I don't know what it is. And then a young female officer. And I start saying, and this is what I know pissed him off. I said, so I'm getting a jaywalking ticket. I go, we're in North Hollywood. There's probably some human trafficking happening right here, but good thing you guys pulled me over going to a play.
Yeah.
And I knew he was pissed off. I knew he was pissed. And I said, really, there's no, you guys aren't doing real police work in Los Angeles. I get if I was in some small town, like you say, in Middlebury, Illinois, they got nothing else to do. Okay. And then a year or so later, I saw him at a Sparks game. He was just working a basketball game and he was mad dogging me. He was looking at me and I waved at him because I'm a stand-up comic and I like making fun of people. But that really, it terrified me.
Yeah.
He had a gun. Now, let's say I was black and all my interactions with cops have been negative. Now, I'm a white kid from the suburbs who I've had plenty of positive interactions with police. I've called the police and had them do their jobs, do their jobs well. But then this one was like, and I'm like, I could see myself or just a person being so terrified, they run.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what? I get shot in the back for jaywalking and resisting arrest. I mean,
so the one thing you gotta, not that you weren't mistreated, but and this goes to anybody listening to this, at any time, if you feel like the police officer is mistreating you, I've done this recently. If you feel like you're being mistreated by the authority, don't act like an asshole then. Don't fuck you, fuck this, fuck that. That's not the time to address it. Wait till the situation is over and then speak to a supervisor. And it's going to be, just like you said, it's going to be a rigmarole. It's going to be a pain in the ass to try to get to somebody to actually do something. But you're right. It's like calling the quarterback because you have a complaint about his best wide receiver. How much is that quarterback going to be on your side, and how much is he going to be on that poor receiver who had a tough day? He just went through all these calls. So, but
my problem here is the backing that then I'm going to talk to the supervisor. Why I didn't is my thinking was I'm going to call the supervisor and, these guys play racquetball together. So he's going to, nothing's going to happen.
Maybe, but if you don't say anything, it's guaranteed nothing will happen. Because trust me, I've worked for supervisors that the minute a complaint comes in like that, it's being investigated. Because there's a lot of cops that don't feel that way. There is no thin blue line. We need to start. And the good thing that that's coming out of all the George Floyd stuff and all this recent bad press with the police. The good thing is that we are now forced to take a look at ourselves and do a better job of investigating ourselves. I know a guy who just left to go to the Professional Standards Bureau, which is it's internal affairs for the Phoenix Police Department. And he was asked to go there to actually start doing real investigations instead of what had been going on in the past where stuff's getting brushed under the carpet. One of my biggest problems is, quite honestly, is police unions. I know more people that saved their job that should have been fired unequivocally, but the police union was able to get them through the standard, the post standard, they call it police officer standards of training, get them to keep their certification because of whatever extenuating circumstances, but absolutely should have lost their jobs. And there's no consistency across it either, Graham. That's the problem. There's no, the Phoenix Police Department handles things one way. The Philadelphia Police Department, they handle things another. There's no consistency across the board.
Well, one of the things that absolutely needs to be consistent, in my opinion, here is there needs to be public oversight. Cops investigating cops is like, you guys, that's
it's like the quarterback investigating the wide receiver. I get it.
Or get it. Right. Or the Patriots investigating themselves on if they were stealing signs or whatever. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
The league outside there needs to be outside public oversight, because if you're going to protect and serve the public and you're getting paid with public tax dollars, then the public needs to come in and go, no, this guy's causing too many problems.
Now, I will tell you, before it gets to the point where you lose your job, the Phoenix Police Department, and I'm sure many other agencies do the same thing. They have civilians on a board. They have a disciplinary board, and it has X amount of civilians on there. It needs to have more civilians, but yes, it needs to have civilians from kind of both sides of the spectrum, because there's a lot of pro law enforcement people out there that, they recognize that it's not just cops giving minorities a hard time or shuffling homeless people down the road. There's other very important jobs, that the police can do. But one of the issues that the defund the police narrative caused is retirements are like astronomical right now. People that are already think about it, Graham. Imagine we'll use the football team analogy, and they start shitting all over the football team, and everybody hates this football team now. And these guys that are close to their 5-year retirement, I'm going to collect a check in after my 5 years. They're going to leave. Your top people that have the most experience, the most knowledge, they're going to say, fuck this, and leave, because if the public doesn't give a shit about, why should I? So then you lose your best people. And then on on the flip side of that, nobody wants to come do the job. Who wants to? I mean, looking at the news, defund the police and everything is, the cops fucked this up and they fucked that up and they fucked this up. Who wants to go do that job? Like, who wants to be under that scrutiny? It's so you lose. I don't know. It's just frustrating, but trust me, I get it. I was never one of those cops that was like, no matter what, yeah, let's make sure he doesn't get busted or he doesn't get, no. If somebody fucked something up or they did something that was malicious, they need to be held accountable for it. 100%. And there's this crazy disparity. Phoenix, you could do all this crazy stuff, not get fired. I know a guy works on a suburb police department. If you're seen looking at pornography on duty, just pornography, fired. Doesn't matter. You're fired just for looking at porn. And on, Phoenix Police Department, if that was the case, like, holy shit, there's people sending porn to each other in their phones. It's like, but it's caused this weird thing. Now the police, what the police departments are doing now is they're trying to do anything they can to retain their top senior people. They're doing the Phoenix Police Department just got a huge raise because they're trying to keep these people around. It's like,
well, yeah, I mean, again, I think you have to restructure the whole thing because, I've always, look, I have no criminal record. I'm a college educated white guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm not interacting. I'm not causing any trouble. I don't even drink anymore. So there's literally no laws I'm breaking at any point in my life anywhere other than maybe like a crosswalk thing. You know what I mean? Like, so, and I, saw LAPD and the Santa Monica Police Department completely overreact. And I see these videos as well. And I was like, I want to go fucking take these cops out. Like, I'm furious watching this shit. And so if I'm feeling that way and I haven't been targeted and harassed my entire life,
imagine
these other groups who were like, pfft. And then like, I know people in the press who got tear gassed. I mean, my niece saw cops, federal cops smash windows and then go arrest people for it. I mean, just like crazy stuff. And it's hard to sit here and go, oh, I live in a country with a over militarized fascist police department in just about every city. Are there good cops? I would flip the script and say, well, yeah, police departments are bad. There's a few good apples in each police department is what I would say. Like, and you being one of them, I know cops that have done good jobs, and there's times I've, seen a legitimate crime happening and I'm like, wow, I'm glad a cop showed up. There's a guy, who just pulled a gun and at the beach and everyone had to run and the cops de-escalated. They didn't gun him down, which was like, wow, they had reason to. And so,
but you also have to realize too, Graham, that the incident, now you have some personal perspective, you have some interactions with cops, but you also have to realize that the media, they're not telling the stories of the month that officer went through and did absolutely his job, took care of people, did what he needed to do. And then, but because nobody wants to hear about that, they want to hear about the one time he fucked up under stress and did something terrible. So then you start to build this thought in your mind that that's all that's going on out there. And I recommend all the people in the chat here I can see that are like, abolish the police, fuck the police. Go on a ride along. Go on one or two ride along. Go on a ride along and see what it before you crap all over them, before you shit all over somebody because of the chocolate cake they fucking made tastes like crap. Make one yourself.
Here's my pushback on that. And that's legitimate. That's legitimate. There's cops doing good stuff. But here's the thing. And now this is, I quote, I'm paraphrasing, but this is Chris Rock's joke. You guys, when you have a bad day at work, it's not you made a bad cake. It's somebody dies. Somebody gets shot that shouldn't have. So it's not, I have a bad day at work and I scream at a heckler too much, or I'm a dick to the club, the wait staff or something like that, nobody died.
Yeah.
Chris Rock made the joke. He goes, you don't hear American Airlines going every time they crash a plane going, but think about all the times we landed you safely. So we crash a plane every once in a while.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Your guy's job is unlike any others.
Yeah.
And if you're going to sign up for a badge and a gun, yes, you're putting your life on the line. You can't have bad days. Like a guy flying a plane can't go, sorry, man. I had a shitty night of sleep. I mean, I crashed a little bit. What are you going to do? Like Sully Sullenberger, he couldn't have a bad day that day when everything went against him.
Yeah.
So,
and that gets down to training. That gets right back to training. We do not train for so you can have a bad day as a police officer and nobody dies. But when you do have a bad day and somebody dies, it's because somebody fucked up along the way. Like they didn't know how to handle that situation correctly. And that is training. That is 100% training. There's just no two ways about it. Think of how often pro sports teams train before they actually go out and play. Like it's the percentage is overwhelming training to actual dealing with the public. And I agree with you. Training is way, way, way underserved. And people don't. Problem is people don't know how to handle themselves under stress until it happens to them. So how about one other suggestion is they have these things called, I don't know if your viewers are going to be interested in this, but they have these things called citizens police academies where you can kind of go there and you learn the training that the police officers get. So you can kind of understand why this guy shot somebody with a knife. You'll learn what the 21-foot rule is. And that if and it's been scientifically shown, if someone is 21 feet from you and you have a holstered weapon, let's say they have a knife and they're coming at you, if they're closer than 21 feet and they're aiming, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to stab you in your face. If they're closer than 21 feet, you cannot get a round off before they stab you. So people don't realize that. They're like, why'd they shoot that guy with a knife or with a bat or a rock or whatever? Go through and see exactly how they're being trained and what's going on.
Okay. But I think that's fair. Here's what I would suggest. So saying people like go to these citizen academies, do a ride along. What I would like to see is more ex-cops or current cops such as yourself advocate to the things that you and I actually agree upon in this conversation, the training, not enough de-escalation training, and non-lethal weaponry. Why is it cops have all these non-lethal weapons and they don't use them half the time? So I would like to hear more police officers or ex-cops such as yourself, because if I say it to a cop, it's like, Graham, you don't know, you weren't a cop, I don't want to hear it. But if you say, hey, like some of the examples you gave right now of you saw guys that there should be civilian oversight, because I would imagine most cops, yourself included, even as you're an ex-cop, but you're a cop for life, right? You know what I mean? It's not like you sold insurance. It's a different type of a job. Like I'll always be a comic, right?
I sell insurance now, Graham, if you need a policy, just
I would imagine most cops would want the majority of the public to trust them,
of course,
and to like them. So I would imagine cops would want to advocate for better training, civilian oversight, demilitarizing these cops, spending more of that militarized money on social programs so cops don't have to be janitors of the park. And imagine if you got pulled over by someone without a badge and a gun. There was just a traffic officer that said, hey, you're going too fast. Here's the court code. You automatically would be like, oh shit. All right. The school crossing guard got me. I'm not like, oh shit. So, you've been on the show I appreciate you spending all this time. So we're going to wrap the show up, but if you want us as civilians to do these things to educate ourselves more, that's fair. Then I think you and other cops need to be more public about the changes that need to be made within the police departments that are going to make Americans feel safer and not hating the cops and not writing all cops are bastards, ACAB, all over the
I
place.
saw it in your, I saw it in the chats there.
Of course. I saw it spray painted on the wall in Santa Monica when I was in Santa Monica, and the
Yeah.
cops focused more on the peaceful protesters, and they let downtown Santa Monica. They didn't get, and that got looted.
Yeah.
Like, and the police chief got fired and the mayor got fired. So I saw it in real time, the poor training, the just aggro meathead shit within the police force. I saw all of it in real time, and that was in Santa Monica, this nice little beach town. And then I saw the California National Guard take over the city for a week. So I was like, the last time I saw that much military was when I literally was doing a show in Iraq. So anyway, I really appreciate you hearing this, and I know you're taking some shit in the chat.
It's okay. I've taken shit my whole career. It's fine. But a lot of people are making good. I mean, they're making good points. It's not like everyone's here are just saying fuck you, blah blah blah. But
I have a smart audience, and I encourage them to be critical thinkers. And it's why the top of this conversation was showing all of the important investigative work the police need to be doing with regard to Maxwell and child exploitation. And that to me is something that's really, really important. And also there's issues that are outside of the police department in terms of like, we need to spend more we're going into a recession, and that's not the police department's fault. That's a country that bails out Wall Street and doesn't give a shit about working class people. If everybody had free healthcare and decent jobs and a $15 minimum wage and all this stuff, there'd be way less crime. You know that. You know how that causes anything. But I really appreciate your time, dude. And
are you gonna let me tell my Bitcoin story, or is that for another?
Oh shit, that's right. All right. Thank you, Eric, for taking the time. Yeah. And I really appreciate everybody in the chat being polite and having a good conversation. And I appreciate you taking the time to have this discussion, even slight debate with me. All right, here we go. There it is. Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood. You're watching The Political Vigilante. I'm here with my longtime friend, Eric Oldenberg, who was also on the retired honorably from the Phoenix Police Department for 24 years. He was a child crimes investigator. He's done some great work. He's shown a lot of insight for me and this channel about the Epstein and Maxwell cases, and which we very much appreciate. But also, I started getting into crypto, but specifically Bitcoin, a little over 2 years ago. And I talk a lot about on this show of why it's important. I don't like the central banks. I mean, this show is always about showing how the political system is broken. Both parties are corrupt and all of that. So, but when I started, Eric, you watch the show on occasion and you watch my Twitter feed on occasion, and you reached out to me and said, dude, I got a great Bitcoin story. And you basically, I'll let you tell it, but you got into Bitcoin like pre-2017, like when it was, and you cashed out and paid off your house. Anyway, tell everybody your Bitcoin story and give us the timeline, because you got in really, really in the early days.
Yeah, I sure did. So back in 2010, I was a computer forensic examiner. So I was a detective, but I was assigned to go through. I basically worked in a lab environment. Any evidence that came in digitally, I was on the team that we would find the evidence and so on and so forth. Well, in my spare time, I was kind of a tech guy. It's so funny because since I retired, and it moves so fast. But anyway, so there's a website called /dot. I think it was /dot.org. Any of the viewers might know and correct me. But it was /dot, and they had this white paper on this really cool new technology called Bitcoin. And so I read the white paper and I heard about blockchain and decentralized, and I thought, you know what, this sounds pretty interesting. I'll throw $500 at it. And so I think it was January of 2011, okay, so back then you couldn't just buy Bitcoin, you had to mine it. And I didn't have a computer powerful enough, or there were thoughts of like, hey, we can turn this computer lab into this great big mining rig. But of course we didn't do that. So
that would have been great, by the way, if the Phoenix Police Department
Richest department in the world. Go ahead and defund us. We got billions in Bitcoin.
We've got
defund us all you want.
We've got 100,000 full Bitcoins that we got it for 6 cents a pop. Good luck.
Yep, exactly. But so anyway, so I'm like, I'll throw $500 at it. How the hell do I get these things? So there was one website back then called Mt. Gox, mtgox.com, and it stands for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange. So apparently it had to do with Magic the Gathering, which is a card game of some sort. And there was I don't know what it was, but all I know is that you could buy Bitcoin off this website. But the problem is I had to get money to this website. And the only way I could do it, and I am not even joking or hyperbolizing this, the only way I could get money to them was through an intermediary in Nigeria. Okay. So like, seriously. So I'm just like, I am either this is going to be great, but I'm probably flushing $500 right down the toilet to some Nigerian prince who needs to get his daughter out of jail or whatever. So, but oddly enough, the transaction went through and I was able to buy Bitcoins for $15 a Bitcoin.
Oh God.
And I got, I think I got 30, I think I had 32 of them is what I had initially. And I remember I had joined a website called bitcoin.org. It was a forum you could learn, talk about Bitcoin. So I was like, yeah, what the hell? I'll get into this. And there was a podcast all the way back then. There was a podcast about Bitcoin. I remember one day, the following week, I'm driving and I'm listening to the podcast. And I'm like, yeah, Bitcoin's down to $8 a coin now. And I'm just like, I fucking flushed all this money down the toilet. What was a stupid decision. I'm so stupid. And we were house poor. I had just purchased a house, put a big bunch of money down, bought furniture. Like I was completely house poor. So I'm just like, you know what? I'll just stick with it. What the hell? So I work in a lab environment with a bunch of other people, a bunch of other computer people, and I'm telling them about this stuff, and they're laughing at me. They're like, are you buying Mario Brothers coins, Eric? Do you need to talk to somebody? Like, what are you going to be selling me Amway? Like, what are you getting yourself into here?
Did you just win the Nigerian lottery, Eric?
Yeah. When does the prince get released, Eric? I mean, like what? So they're all giving me shit. And then Bitcoin is slowly going. And I worked in this lab from, it was 2008 up until 2015. But while I worked there the whole time, the Bitcoin's going up and going up. And it got up to about, I remember when my daughter was 7, a little funny side story, Bitcoin was worth probably about $400 a coin. And I remember saying to my colleagues, I said, when my daughter's 16, I'm going to buy her a car for the value of 1 Bitcoin, thinking, it might get up to a couple $1,000s. When my daughter turned 16, Bitcoin was $64,000 a coin. So she loves her Maserati. I mean, it is the... No, but I was like, honey, daddy lied to you. I'm sorry. You're not getting a 65. Anyway, backing that up. So it's going up. Bitcoin's going up and up and up and up and up. And then it got to $1,200 a coin. And I don't remember what the time frame was. But then Mt. Gox, the website, got hacked. And all the Bitcoins that were up on the exchange got hacked. Well, when I bought my Bitcoins, I knew immediately, put those in a private wallet. I'm putting those so I have control of them. So I didn't lose anything during that. But of course, it goes up to 1,200, gets hacked, and then the market completely crashes. They crash all the way down to $200 a coin. And I'm like, and everybody was like, you stupid fuck, you dumbass, look at you, ha ha. And of course, cops, love them or hate them, they like to give each other shit. So they're just constantly like, you dipshit, yeah, you flushed all that down the toilet, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, fuck. And I'm like, you know what? My plan has been all along, I'm not selling any of this until it's fuck you. So I hold on, and it's doing this crazy stuff. Well, during all that, I read about this other cryptocurrency called XRP or Ripple. So have you heard of Ripple? Have you heard of that crypto? Yes. So they were giving away. So the difference between Bitcoin and XRP is they basically pre-mine all their 100 billion XRP that's ever going to exist. There's no mining. It's just all these exist now. So they were worthless. They were like fractions, like I paid 3/100ths of a penny for these things. So I started to convert some of my Bitcoin into XRP, but they were giving these things away so much just because I was on that forum, bitcoin.org, before a certain date. They gave me 50,000 XRP. So, well, they were worthless. They were 3/100ths of a penny each. So I had a couple, I'm like, whatever. But I'm like, you know what? I said, this is a pretty good hedge, because think about it, right? Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies, they're this decentralized, platform where there's no one entity that is in control of the money, which is anti-banking.
Right.
It's against the banks. Well, Ripple's whole thing was, we're building this network in order to move money as quickly as possible using this XRP token. So it was like they were the anti-cryptocurrency. They were the ones, and a lot of people were like, fuck them, they're working with the banks. And my response to that is, the banks aren't going anywhere. Like, they're so powerful. I don't believe banks are going to disappear because we came. So I'm like, you know what? I'll hedge my bet. So I started accumulating these things at fractions of a penny. I had 450,000 XRP at one point. And mind you, they're worth now a penny an XRP or whatever, right? So I remember, fast forward a couple of years, and my partner and I are carpooling into work. And Melissa, I wouldn't say I stumbled into a lot of money. I read that white paper, was very intrigued, and thought there was a future in it, and I was very educated. No, anyway, yeah, I basically fell into no. So I'm driving with my partner, and for whatever reason, I don't know, I still kind of followed the cryptocurrency. I bought a couple Ether too along the way for, I think they were like $30 each, and I'm like, yeah, I'll buy a couple hundred of these things, whatever. So and then I start seeing that XRP is up, and when it hit 10 cents, Graham, I lost my mind. I was like, these are fucking 10 cents. I can't believe. So this is like, I want to say this is 2016-ish, late 2016. And then the crypto thing just started going up and up and up and up, slowly up and up and up. And I will tell you, in December 2017 is when it was, like January 2018 when everything dropped. December of 2017, I bought $500 in XRP, and I spent maybe another $500 in, $500 in Bitcoin, maybe another 500 in XRP. So a total of $1,000. It is December of 2017. I'm looking at my little tracker, and I have $1.8 million in cryptocurrency is what my balance was based on my $1,000 investment. So I have to make a decision. Is that fuck you money, or is this going to continue and be whatever? So of course, now realize I could have put $1 million cash in the bank. I could have paid my taxes. I could have, fuck no. I rode that sucker all the way back down. Woo! And along the way, I panicked and sold enough, because I was like, this whole thing might crash. I was like, this could all go away. So I pulled out enough to pay off my house, and paid my house off in 2018, which was amazing. And I still have several Bitcoin. I have a bunch of XRP. I still have a pretty decent portfolio, and I'm always trying to look for kind of things to, coins and systems that look like they have a future. But I stick to the main ones, Ethereum, Bitcoin. I have some like Bitcoin Cash, because there were some splits and things where I got free coins, but I stick with XRP, Bitcoin, and Ethereum as the big three. And people always, when they hear the story, they're like, Eric, listen, man, what should I get? What's your advice on cryptocurrency? And my advice is, build yourself a time machine and go back to 2010 when I did, and buy $500 worth of Bitcoin or whatever. But yeah, so I am just, it's the craziest thing ever. It's like a lottery ticket. But what's nuts now, Graham, is you see how the market is just up and down. And recently my portfolio had gotten close to $1 million again. when Bitcoins were 65,000 each,
Right.
and I had a bunch of Ethereum and all that. It was getting close, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to make a decision again. I'm gonna have to make a decision soon, but I didn't have to because it crashed again, and now we are where we are. So I'm just holding on for dear life. My goal now at this point is I have enough so I can give 1 Bitcoin to each of my children and grandchildren whenever the time comes. That's the idea, whatever they're worth. But yeah, I've been as Melissa said, I've been extremely lucky.
Dude, I first of all, I think that's
Extremely.
great that you paid off your house with $1,000 investment.
Yeah,
Like, that's
exactly.
amazing.
Right. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
I mean, that right there, you won. You've won.
Yep.
And
Everybody
everything
tells me that. Agreed that I won, but remember, I know that I had $1.8 million at one point, and I didn't,
Well,
so
here's the thing. Having like studied a lot of crypto, but especially Bitcoin, and I've interviewed like people like Max Kaiser. I've had like financial experts on the show. Bitcoin specifically is going to be the world's reserve currency. And there's a chance Bitcoin's going to go to 500,000, $1 million a coin in the next 10 years. And then you're going to go, yep, you did it right. You cashed out just enough to pay out your house and then hung on. Because at this point, because you've already won by paying off your house, there's no just sit on it until it becomes an amount of money that you're like, okay, like you said, give each one of your kids.
Yep.
I
look every single day. I used to have private wallets and keys and hard cold storage and all that stuff, and it just got too much for me. So I moved everything to Coinbase, which seems to be a very stable whatever. And
just be worried that they could seize it from you. That's my only concern.
I know. I get it. But guess what? They're not going to seize my house, bitches. I already paid it off, son. The thing is that every day I check my balance every single day.
Yeah.
Like I wake up in the morning and it's one of the first things I look at is, and I don't have any plans on doing anything because I watch this. I mean, my portfolio recently got up to just under $900,000. And then when it crashed, it was under $200,000. And of course I'm like, and then you tell yourself you can time the market and all this other stuff. But I'm with you. I believe there is a future to this. I believed it in 2010. I believe it today. Just seeing what had happened recently during COVID and the whole thing kind of crashing and the stock market and the recession. And people are still, I thought everybody was out of crypto. They're like, fuck this. We need money to live. I was surprised.
You've been in it long enough to see it like go up, and then it hit 20,000 in 2017, then crashed. Yep. And then, it was at 10, 12,000 or whatever, in March of 2020, when COVID hit, it drops to like $4,000.
Yep.
And then a year later, it's at 60 some $1,000 or whatever. And you're like,
insane. Yeah.
So you're seeing this,
I do believe there's a lot of market manipulation going on by the people that have large wallets. And I just wish I could time it correctly because they're pumping it up and then they're selling and then they're waiting for it to crash and then they're buying back in. So I think the whales are manipulating the whole thing, but it doesn't matter because they're trying to make money, and in making money, it's causing I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. It would be much nicer if it was somewhat regulated, but that takes away the whole point of decentralization because who do you put in charge of it? You can't put anybody in charge of it.
Yeah.
So, but because of that, there's the negative of but it's been an amazing ride. And it's a funny story that I can tell people all the time that, I paid my house off with $500 worth of Bitcoin. So, which is crazy. Graham, think about it. It's just like this money appeared out of like, wait, what?
No, it's a winning lottery ticket, dude. You bought 500, it's a winning, it's a crazy thing, so. And
what's crazy is when I withdrew the money out of the account, the IRS, there was no Bitcoin questions. There was no crypto. They did not have cryptocurrency under control. But I paid my capital gains taxes on every Bitcoin that I sold. And if you guys out there are doing this, pay your taxes, because I did not want The last thing I wanted to have happen to me was, yeah, you know what? The IRS isn't really paying attention. And then in 2028, get a fucking letter from the IRS saying, hey, man, remember back in 26? And then I got interest and everything else. So pay your taxes. They're on top of it now. And if they're not on top of it now, they're going to figure it out. And then they're going to come back after you later. So.
It's trackable now. That's the other thing too, because it's blockchain and it's open source. Every transaction is trackable, so they'll be able to see where you cashed out. So I told my accountant, I was like, "This is all the money I made from crypto. Let's pay taxes on it. Let's declare it. I get 1099."
It's a matter of time. Yeah, it's a matter of time before they have it all, so that it's just basically they got tentacles right into wherever the exchanges are, and they know, just like the stock market. There's a form that gets submitted and all that other stuff. Yeah.
Well,
so
dude,
I'm in a fun spot right now where I can throw a little bit of money at it. My thing now is that anytime I buy anything crypto, I buy $500 worth, because $500, I can't buy any other amount because that was the lucky amount, if you will.
That's your lucky amount.
Yeah, $500.
Well, dude, that's a great story. I'm glad you told it to us. And also you've been in crypto long enough to see back the fact that I'm sure you're seeing all these exchanges and mass adoption. You're seeing how it's becoming mainstream, and we're still in the early stages. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, we're still in the infancy stages of this for sure.
And it's only going to go higher. So, well, Eric, I really appreciate you taking time today to talk to us about all this wide range of subjects. And it was really great to see you, man. And hopefully I'll be in Arizona soon doing a show and we can hang out.
It was great to see you too, Graham. We don't talk enough, and I miss you. You're a very good friend, and Graham says we've known each other for a long time. We went to college together basically, and had just an amazing time. Graham started doing stand-up comedy in college. We would ride our bicycles down to the Laughs Comedy Club, and we had fake IDs to get in there. So, but I've known you for a very long time, and I've had the greatest respect for you. And I know you and I have very different political opinions on things, but I just love the fact that you and I can have a conversation. Too many people in this world, and your audience, you have like a diverse audience that is about discourse. Because I think the number one problem in this country is we've created a system where discourse isn't welcome. Like, you got demonetized off of YouTube. It's fucking stupid.
I know.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. We should be able, if we want to have a truly a functioning democracy, we have to be able to have a reasonable debate with each other and listen. Like, all of the things you said today about being a cop, I was like, I got to listen. I got to listen to this. Even if I push back on it. Yeah. It's like, because we both came into it going, I'm willing to hear what the other guy has to say. We didn't come at it like, I'm going to win this argument and I'm going to crush this guy. We came into it like, I want to hear what you have to say, and that's what we need more of in this country, is the ability
progress.
It is. Like, we've had disagreements. We had crazy yelling arguments when we were in our 20s. We were jackasses when we were in college. So we've still maintained a friendship. Yeah. And like you say, I appreciate that, and I respect the work that you've done, and we have known each other literally since we were 18. Yep. Riding our bikes to open mics and using fake IDs to get in there, and it's true.
And then you're like, I'm going to use my funny for the world, and I said I'm going to use my funny for the police department.
No, but man, you are an example. It's again why I like talking to you, because you are an example of what of good police, of why we do need police in this world. Yes. And it needs, to have a reasonable discussion and debate about how there are clear problems right now, and to how to discuss them and come up with some solutions. I'm open to solutions, and that's what you are too. So I appreciate that. Anyway, man, say hi to your wife and everybody. It was great to see you, dude. And I really appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Cheers. Thanks everybody for listening and putting up with a cop for a couple of hours.
A Bitcoin cop.
Bitcoin cop. Yeah, that's it. All right, brother.
All right, man. We'll see you.
Take care.